Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Explore and Engage with Anam. I want to start this episode by talking about New York City. And as you can see from the title of this episode, I am calling New York City a city where common sense does not make sense. It's a city where common sense doesn't make sense anymore. And let me explain why I am using this title. In New York City, there is a law that's called Right to Shelter. And that law guarantees a right to shelter within New York City. And as I have mentioned before in my podcast, something that is widely known, and that is New York City is a sanctuary city. In fact, the liberal leaders of New York, they are actually, it seems to me that they are very proud of the fact that New York City is a sanctuary city. So that means anyone who arrives in New York City, the city will provide a sanctuary. And the right to shelter law guarantees a right to shelter within New York City. But all of a sudden, it seems that Mayor Eric Adams is trying to walk away from that promise. He wants to weaken the right to shelter law to discourage people from showing up to New York City. But it's a sanctuary city. There's a right to shelter in the city. Now, why is Mayor Eric Adams walking away from that promise? Because thousands and thousands and thousands of people who have crossed the southern border of the United States, these are foreign nationals who are showing up to the United States. They are showing up to New York City. They are arriving in New York City, looking for a place to shelter, and now it seems that the city cannot handle the pressure anymore. And so Mayor Eric Adams is trying to weaken the right to shelter law to discourage people from coming to New York City. So is he walking away from that promise that New York City is a sanctuary city? He's trying to weaken the right to shelter law. Now, there's strong opposition to the mayor's proposal. There are advocates who believe that pausing or suspending the right to shelter law would hurt local homeless families. And then I'm also seeing reports that the government is looking at all possible options to house migrants, but it really seems that the city cannot handle the pressure anymore. So New York City, did you overpromise when you said that it's a sanctuary city? Did you overpromise when you said that there's a right to shelter within New York City? What about that promise? If it's going to be a sanctuary city, will people understand that it's going to be a sanctuary city for everyone? And now that migrants are really trusting that promise and showing up in the city, the liberal leader, Mayor Eric Adams, seems to be walking away from that promise. Well, why did you make that promise in the first place? Why did you have to make New York City a sanctuary city? There are so many communities around the country that are not sanctuary cities. There are local elected officials in so many cities across the United States that will never declare their cities to be sanctuary cities. Why did you have to make that promise? And now you're trying to walk away from that promise. Government is looking at all possible options to house migrants. What are the all possible options? Yeah, the government is trying to put migrants in school gymnasiums. The government is trying to put migrants on college campuses in dorms. What other options are there? What plans do New York City leaders have? Well, it's a sanctuary city. But now Mayor Eric Adams is trying to walk away from that promise. So what does that mean? That's why I say that New York City is a place where common sense does not make any sense. If the leaders had common sense, they would never declare the city to be a sanctuary city. And if they did make that promise, why are they walking away from that promise now? Well, for a long time, resources were stretched thin in New York City. Crime is high, rents are high, transportation system is not great. There are many problems in the city. Homelessness crisis, it's a pre-existing problem. There are lots of homeless people in the city, and resources were stretched thin for a long time. And now, on top of everything else, there are thousands of migrants, tens of thousands of migrants showing up in New York City looking for a place to shelter in a city where the resources are already stretched thin, but the city leaders promised that it's going to be a sanctuary city. And the migrants believed that promise. And now the city is trying to come up with all kinds of new resources for the migrants. Well, where are the resources? How many dollars are you going to spend to take care of the migrants? How many billions of dollars will New York City spend to take care of all the new people, to take care of all the foreign nationals who are arriving in the city? What about the local homeless population? What about the American citizens who were in New York City, who were homeless, who are still homeless, even before the migrants started showing up? What will happen to them? There are limited resources, and as I said, the resources are stretched thin, and there seems to be not enough resources to take care of the local homeless population, the homeless population of American citizens. And now there are foreign nationals coming in because it's a sanctuary city. And so that's why I say that New York City is a complete mess. That's the only way I can describe the city. It's a complete mess. And look what's happening now. I just saw in the news yesterday that there are human service workers who are protesting in the city. They're asking for better pay. Inflation has made life very difficult for a lot of people, including human services workers in New York City. And these are some of the people who take care of the homeless population in New York. And so at a time when the city is already dealing with homelessness crisis, there comes the influx of migrants, and now the human services workers are protesting and demanding higher pay. So you can imagine how bad the situation is in New York City. So what's going to happen next? Buses after buses are still coming. There will likely be more arrivals in the days to come. People who are crossing the southern border and entering the United States. Many more of those people will show up in New York City looking for sanctuary, looking for a place to shelter, because the city leaders have made that promise, and it seems that they have overpromised, and now they can't deliver. Well, this problem could have been avoided, as I mentioned before in my podcast. All of this that's happening, the migrant crisis, this could have been avoided. All that the Biden administration had to do was to secure the border. All that the Biden administration had to do is to not allow this flood of migrants. As a sovereign country, we should have a secure border, but we don't. And people from foreign countries are showing up looking for sanctuary in the United States, and they are going to New York City, among other places. Chicago is another mess, but I won't talk about Chicago in this episode. I talked about Chicago already previously, and yes, I will talk about Chicago in the future again, but not in this episode. This is about New York City. What a complete mess that city is. If common sense would have prevailed in New York, in the city leaders would never embrace the sanctuary city status. But it is a sanctuary city. And so, New York, are you going to keep your promise and handle the situation? Or will you admit that it was foolish to embrace that sanctuary city status in the first place? My friends, let me tell you something more about New York City. In a recent study, the city has been ranked as the worst city to start a professional career in the United States. And this is according to a recent study by Wallet Hub. I'm not surprised. Are you surprised to see this ranking? I'm not. The city has been ranked 182nd in the list. So if you are a young American who graduated from college and you're looking to start a career in New York City, well, that's not a great idea. Move out of New York City, go someplace else, and start a career. Go to Orlando, Florida. Go to Salt Lake City, Utah. Go to Charleston, South Carolina. Go someplace else, but move out of New York City because the city is a complete mess. And it is the worst city in the United States to start a career. As I said before, rent is high, crime is high, the city is crowded, the transportation system is not great, homelessness is widespread, and there are tons and tons of other problems. That's New York City. My friends, that's all I have for this episode. Share with me your thoughts and comments. Send me a message. Go to tawsifanam.net. Connect with me on social media. Check out my website. Check out my blog. And stay connected with me. I want to thank you again for continuing to listen to my podcast. And I hope to be back again with a new episode very soon. Thank you.